Yeah, so the Ocean Glow races is such a unique race because of this aspect of it being retro and not having satellite com. Well, we have satellite comms, but not allowed to use it for weather, and not having GPS. So it did take us a while to adjust, I think.
Ahoy, shipmates! Welcome back to On the Wind. My name's Andy. I'm your host. This is the last episode of this season. A little bit chaotic here. I just got back to Sweden. I think I brought a bug back on the airplane, so I'm a little bit sick. Now I got Axel a little bit sick. He's standing behind me on the whiteboard in the container drawing because he's not going to school today. So it's a little bit chaos right now, but it's all good fun. Really nice to be home. We launched Spica on Saturday, our Norlene 34 that I'm racing Galton Runt on this summer. Heading down there this afternoon. It's finally spring in Sweden. It's spectacular. I'm in a great mood despite the chaos. As I said, last episode of this season, then we'll take a few weeks break when the Quarterdeck podcast will come back on, and we'll be back with you next season. This episode, I think, is with Emma and Heather, the skipper of Maiden that won the OGR, the Ocean Globe Race. So really excited to listen to this one myself. A couple quick happenings at 59 North. On Friday, if you're on our mailing list, you would have gotten an email that says we're taking pre-bookings for the 2025 racing schedule. Yes, Axel. You can hear him coughing in the background. Oh, man, family life. So we're taking pre-bookings for the 2025 racing schedule. Nikki and Alex are going to run the Carib 600 race in February and the Middle Sea race in October. So the same thing we're doing this year. The 600 was a huge success this year, and they're both excited to get back on the water and do that. So if you're interested in racing offshore in either of those events, you can sign up on the sign-up page at 59-north.com. and just list one of those as 2025. And then once we announce the actual dates and prices, Mia will be in touch to fix the crew puzzle. All right, well, because of the chaos, that's all I have to say for today. We'll see you in a few weeks when we're back for On the Wind. In the meantime, when we're on break, make sure to check out the Quarterdeck podcast. And if you're not already a member, go to quarterdeck.59-north.com and sign up. We're doing lots of fun stuff over there. All right, until next time, hold fast.
Harborburn Cannon Company is presenting this season of On the Wind. Harborburn was founded by our 59 North founders and some of our friends. And it was founded on the idea that if you own a boat, you need a cannon. Harborburn sells these very cool signal cannons that fit into a winch holder and look very shiny and impressive and make a loud bang and a puff of smoke to celebrate a sunset or the beginning of a race or just to entertain, hopefully, your neighbors in the anchorage. I have had a lot of fun experiences with the cannons on board the 59 North boats. Up at 80 degrees north in Svalbard, we fired one off on Eastbjorn, which was really special. And we also fired one towards a sailboat that we overtook in the middle of the Atlantic on Ice Bear. Andy and I were towards the end of a transatlantic passage to the Azores, and we were overtaking a Danish sailing vessel, hailed them on the radio and asked permission, which you should do, to fire our cannon in their general direction. And we explained everything about it, and they thankfully said yes. And everyone was up on deck on our boat and on their boat and cheering. And, we blew by them, shot off a cannon, and then saw them a few days later in port and got to laugh about it and share stories and videos, which was really fun. So if you think that you might need a cannon for your boat, which I too am now a Harborburn cannon owner on my boat, you should check them out at harborburn.com, and they can custom stamp your boat name or anything you want onto the cannon, which is pretty special. That's harborburn.com. This season of On the Wind is presented by our friends at Forbes Horton Yachts. Forbes is a yacht broker, and he both buys and sells boats with you and for you, and he is a buyer's broker for any boat that you have your eye on, even if it's not his listing. That can work entirely conflict-free. He can come in and help you check out the boat that you want to buy and help you buy it. He advised me on the boat that I bought a couple years ago. And even though it was listed on an auction, He still advised me through the process and just gave me some tips on buying a boat and on the boat I was buying. It's really great that he's a sailor himself. Forbes and his wife, Jamie, refitted and sailed their tartan to the Eastern Caribbean and back, and they understand boats and the sea and cruising. So I find that really helpful in a broker for buying a sailboat. So you can find Forbes at forbesyachts.com to sell your current boat and or buy your dream boat. That's forbesyachts.com. You're listening to On the Wind, the podcast about sailing. I'm your host, Emma Garshagen. Heather Thomas just won the Ocean Globe race as the skipper of the iconic yacht Maiden. This made history. They are the first all-female crew to win a round-the-world race, and Heather is the youngest female skipper to do so. It was her first full circumnavigation. Heather grew up in West Yorkshire sailing on dinghies at a local club and has been working professionally on sailboats since she was 18. Heather and I sailed together aboard Maiden in 2022, and it was wonderful hearing about her experience skippering and winning the inaugural Ocean Globe race. So, hi, Heather. I'm so glad to have you on the podcast. I feel like this has been a long time coming, but I think now is the best time to be doing the interview after you've just won the Ocean Globe race. Congratulations.
Thank you very much.
We were going to talk when you were in Uruguay, but you were sick and like the timeline was so crazy. And and I'm glad we sort of, hopefully let you recover enough, to then go sail the last leg. And,
Yeah, I mean, I seem to get sick every port I was in. I actually got sick a couple of weeks ago as well. It's one of those, as soon as you get back to land after not being around all of those lurgies, you seem to always get them.
Exactly. Yeah, and you're like, I find that too when I've been offshore and like in a sort of weird sleep schedule and sort of high stress situations, and you're always on, especially you as the skipper are always on in some way. And I feel like that always makes me crash when I get back to shore. My body's like, okay, we can relax now and get sick and do what we need to do, because you don't really have time for it offshore.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And it's great. At least it doesn't happen at sea, but then you have this issue of you've got all this maintenance to do and family to catch up with and responsibilities, and suddenly you're like dead.
And you'd like lost your voice. I think you left me like a voice message and you sounded like not well. So
I lost my voice. Yeah, and everyone was like, "Oh, have you been partying a bit much?" And I'm like, "No, this is the flu." I actually got COVID at one point as well. Like, it was just mental. Everyone was like, "Why are you always ill?" My immune system's just terrible at the moment, I think. You deserve a big rest and recovery now. Where are you right now? So I'm actually currently at my parents' house up in Yorkshire, just visiting for the weekend. Back in the UK.
Cool. And I wanted to just ask sort of about the start of your sailing career. I have lots of questions about the race, but I want to get a little background on you. And I know bits of this from when we met and sailed together almost 2 years ago now. And, but I want you to sort of like give me a little arc. I see a Clipper race flag behind you.
This is actually, this is my map of the world.
Oh, cool.
And every single crossing I've done has a different string. So it's starting to look a bit like knitting in the Atlantic, but
I know, that sort of Atlantic section is going to start getting like
it's going to start getting grooves in it, I think. So I started sailing when I was about 7, and it was dinghy sailing at the local sailing club here in Otley. And when I was 16, I got the chance to go on a boat called James Cook, which is run by the Ocean Youth Trust up in Newcastle, and it takes kids on sailing trips up the northeast coast. And I just loved it. It was like I found my happy place. I found my people. It really kind of all clicked into place. So then I went back and volunteered for them for 2 years whilst I was finishing my education. And then that's when I did the Clipper. So I got a bursary from the Andrew Simpson Sailing Foundation. They paid for me to do leg 6 of the Clipper race.
Cool.
And then I ended up staying for leg 7 and 8. They couldn't get rid of me. And that was with Wendy Tuck.
Oh, very cool.
Who's an absolute legend. And the first female skipper to win around the world race. So an absolute honour to sail with her.
Mm-hmm.
And then I just worked in the industry for a long time and did everything from flotilla skipper, charter skipper, teaching, anything, working on some big yachts as well.
Mm-hmm.
And then kind of COVID hit. I was teaching the Caribbean and I came home, and then I heard that Maiden were looking for crew. So I was like, well, that would be pretty cool. Applied and then spoke to Tracy a week later, and then she offered me a job, and I went straight down to Solent to meet the boat, and it's been 3 years now. So
wow, cool. And when you were in the Caribbean teaching, you were at Broadreach, right?
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah, Broadreach.
There's a bunch of Broadreach overlap at 59 North. Andy sort of had sort of the start of his career there, and sort of modeled 59 North off of Broadreach. He basically was like, wait, I want to do this, but for adults. Like, I want to do a sailing camp for adults on like a larger scale. So that's really neat. And when you started on Maiden 3 years ago, so you did quite a bit of sailing with them before doing the OGR. And I'm trying to remember the timeline, how because Maiden was doing this world tour. How far did you go on Maiden before the OGR start?
Yeah. So we were planning on doing the whole round the world. We started in Dubai in January of 21, I think, or maybe been 22. I can't really remember. They all merge together, the years, don't they? And then we went through the Suez Canal and through the Mediterranean, and pretty much beelined for the east coast of the US, which is where they stopped the tour last year, the last time they did the tour because of COVID. So we picked up and did a fundraising tour of the east coast of the US. And then back across the Atlantic, stopped in the Azores and Cape Verde Islands, Senegal, and then Cape Town. And then Cape Town is where Tracy flew out and kind of told us, oh yeah, we're going to do the Ocean Globe race. And then a couple of days later, she asked me if I would be the skipper, because at that point I was still crew. I was the navigator and the plumber, so a bit of a bit of
a promotion, yeah.
It was a little bit unexpected, but
was that something that you were like, was that something you had your sights set on, was like doing a race like the OGR as a skipper? Like, was that something that was like a dream for you at that point?
Yeah, so ever since I sailed with Wendo on the Clipper race, it was for me a goal to do around the world as a skipper. I didn't expect it to be on Maiden. I didn't really expect it to be the Ocean Globe race, but it was already something in the back of my mind that I wanted to achieve. So
and there was a little touch and go with Maiden doing the OGR. I remember when we were sailing together, I think they were maybe going to do it, and then they weren't, and then they were, and I think so that must have been sort of like how much time did you have between finding out you were skippering the OGR in Cape Town and like starting the race up in Europe?
So it was January when we were told, we're going to do the OGR, and then the race set off in September. So, and then we still had to take the boat back to the UK as well. So we had, it was quite tough timing, getting all that into place and recruiting new crew and getting the boat ready. And, so it's quite a lot.
Yeah, I'm sure.
to get done in a short space.
Yeah. Was it, how did it feel? How did it feel leaving on the first leg? What did you? How was that day for you?
Oh, it was. I don't think I've ever seen so many boats in one place. When we were kind of crossing the start line, and there was kind of that excitement. A lot of the boats had been working on the projects for years and years, and for them that was a real big moment. And I think all of us were just so happy to be going offshore and to leave the maintenance behind us. I'm sure you can understand it right now. It was crazy. There was boats everywhere. And and we crossed the start line, and it was kind of like almost a relief because we were finally setting off. We were finally doing it. But like a bit of trepidation as well because it's a weird one because we give our phones away and we have no comms with the outside world apart from the race office. It's a little bit daunting. I was kind of still figuring out how I'd be able to get weather forecasts. I was still figuring out a lot of the different things, and the team had not really sailed together properly offshore. So there was a little bit of nerves there, but
yeah, that's quite a lot to go into. But you also, like, I remember we only sailed together for like a week or so, but you were essentially an unnamed first mate, if not an unnamed co-skipper. And like, you know, you knew that boat inside and out and like could run the boat. And often I feel like we're like such a solid watch leader. And so when I heard you were skippering the OGR, I was like, of course, but that is a big step. And for me, you know, like, yeah, I feel like, I don't know. That is a big step up. And I know whenever I've taken a step up in my career, even if you know you're qualified, there is for me always this feeling of like, what if I can't do it? What if there's like an imposter feeling that comes up for me where I'm like, what if they find out I actually don't know how to sail, which, you know, isn't true, but like is this little like voice in my head that pops up sometimes. And I wonder how that felt for you starting. Did you feel like, yes, I've got this, or did you feel like unsure?
So, I mean, the first time I'd actually skippered a ocean passage was just after I was asked if I would do the race. So it was on Maiden, not long before the race started, and that was my first one. I remember feeling like, oh, like I now have this entire responsibility, and what if I make the wrong calls and I break something, or even worse, like, you know, something happens that's, you know, fatal to one of my crew. I mean, that was the biggest thing for me. Going into this was it's a boat where there's the potential for someone to get hurt. We're going into areas, especially in the Southern Ocean, where there's that potential, and that's a big responsibility, and that's something that, you know, you can't take lightly. You've got to think about that. But yeah, I definitely had a bit of an imposter syndrome, and I think throughout the entire race, like even a little bit now, when I looked at the other skippers and I went into the room of all the other skippers, I'd kind of be a bit like, oh, are they really going to think that I'm taking this seriously or I'm good enough? Because, you know, I am 13 years younger than any of them. I don't have as much sailing experience as many of them. One of only 2 females as well. It's kind of, there's always a little bit of like, I don't really feel like I belong. Especially I didn't grow up sailing yachts. I didn't grow up going to yacht clubs and all of these different places. So whenever you walk into a really fancy yacht club, you're kind of like, oh.
I know. I get that feeling too. I'm like, they're going to know. Yeah. They're going to know. They're going to know I have no idea how to be here. I totally get that. But yeah, and you said even you feel that even a bit now, even though you've won the race.
Yeah, I guess
Isn't that
there's still a
amazing?
bit of, maybe it was a fluke. Maybe. I know. So now like looking at the like stuff I've got coming up, I'm like, oh, what if now I do really badly? And they're like, oh, it must have just been a one-time thing, which I'm sure won't happen. But
no, I know it's such a real feeling. Yeah.
Ridiculous thing in the back of your brain, that self-doubt is always there, unfortunately.
Totally. Yeah. Even I totally understand that. And and it's good to talk about it too. Cause it's, I think, even just hearing you say that, I'm like, oh, okay. If you're still feeling that, like my doubts, must be normal and also probably not true, you know, like my own doubts, feel a bit less.
It's definitely something I think I would have wanted to hear going into the industry when I was younger. Yeah. Like, there are people out there that feel the same as
totally me. Yeah, and people who we look up to, and totally exactly. So I wanted to what do you think, this is sort of this is my next question, and interesting based on what we were just saying, but what do you think makes you a good skipper? Like, what makes you successful?
I think I've always kind of been a pretty natural leader, even from when I was very young and I was teaching dinghy sailing. And I think I'm quite calm. I'm quite under pressure. I am quite a calm person. I don't shout on the boat unless it's like a dangerous situation. And I kind of lead in a way that I would want to be led. So I really tried my best to make sure that all of my crew felt empowered and they felt like they were learning and they felt like they were improving and that everybody was doing that for each other. So we were creating the team in a way where everyone felt like they were improving and they were respected and they were empowered, and then then you get the best out of your crew. If you're just shouting at them and shouting orders, they're just going to do what you say and they're not actually going to learn and encourage each other and support each other. So that's how I tried to build the team. And I think that really worked really well. And, giving people responsibilities. So from the start, I gave all of the crew, this is your department, you're in charge of sales, you're going to be in charge of rigging, you're going to be in charge of this. So everybody had their little nugget of responsibility, which I think works because everyone has accountability on the boat and everyone feels included and there's no... Yeah, I think that was a good thing. I think looking at some of the other boats and where they kind of maybe went wrong, I had a really good appreciation for the boat and how much she could handle, and how much the crew could handle. And we really didn't push the boat to its full extent until maybe the last leg, because if you break something out there, that's ending your race like it did for some of the entries. So you're kind of having this balance between being not conservative but not pushing fully until you feel like, okay, if we break something, it won't end our race type thing, if that makes sense.
Totally. Yeah.
Yeah,
I think
I think as well with like the helming as well. So on the first leg, of course, not many of the girls have done a lot of like heavy downwind, spinnaker helming, anything like that. So you're not maybe pushing the boat as hard as it can because you're trying to get the helms better and better. And then that last leg, that they can handle 35 knots downwind with a spinnaker up, no problem. But they wouldn't have been able to do that at the start. So it's kind of that continuous improvement.
Yeah. Yeah, that's really great. I think, and then what off of that, what was the most challenging part of leading or skippering for you?
I think going back into the self-doubt part of it, I think I really struggled when we were in light wind patches, because I was always thinking, like, oh, I've made a mistake here. I shouldn't have gone in this area. I should have gone in another area. And sometimes when I was making decisions, I really kind of doubted myself. And especially in like the last leg when we went west and a lot of people went east. And a lot of people on our HF daily fleet chats were like, why are you going that way? Why are you going that way? And I was like, I think it's going to pay off if we go this way. And I was kind of doubting myself quite a lot and beating myself up about it. And it ended up paying off. But, I think that for me, it was the kind of torture I put myself through of always taking, if we weren't doing well, I really took that hard. And especially in the light winds when there's really nothing you can do, the boat isn't moving very fast, you can't really get out of that situation very quickly, and you're kind of seeing everyone else do really well and get past that high pressure and you're still stuck in it. And it's just, that for me was the hardest.
Yeah,
the hardest thing to deal with.
That's so hard. And I think Nikki Henderson and I were just talking about this on the phone yesterday, how it's the easiest to feel stress when there isn't that much happening. Like when like it's windy and like when you're in like a more high stakes situation sailing, you just do what you need to do. Like there's plenty of sail changes to make. There's plenty of trimming to do. There's plenty of stuff to do with the boat. But when there's no wind or light wind, you have all this time and space just to like be in your own head. And like, that's the hardest part. Like you can't distract yourself as easily with the sailing because there isn't as much to do.
And there's always stuff to do on the boat, but it tends to be me sat on the nav desk looking at whatever weather information we've got and the charts and going, well, what if we do this? What if we do that? And you're just thinking about all these scenarios, and then in the end you have to just be like, well, we're not moving anywhere, so all this work is kind of for nothing.
Right. You can't just keep worrying and worrying over. Yeah, totally. And I remember watching that in the last leg when, it took a little while for your choices to pay off. And like, I think I remember watching like the easterly boat sort of take off and you guys sitting behind. And that must have been that moment when you were like feeling really, wondering if it was going to work.
Yeah. And then I just, obviously the crew were kind of saying, oh, why are we going this way? And I had to try and explain my choices. And then even by those explanations, you're almost talking yourself into the decision, even though it was the right decision in the end. You kind of just go around in these circles of, oh, maybe I shouldn't have done it like this. And then they did get stuck by that high pressure, and we were leading for a while until the water maker broke. But
that was
so it did pay off. It's just you just do these things to yourself, and
totally,
it's just one of those things.
Yeah, and the sort of like
being a leader.
Yeah, and like the making the decision and being able to justify it. I remember the first time I was skippering with Broadreach, making a choice about why we were not going to leave, in the morning. We were going to wait till the afternoon or whatever the decision was. And just like making sure I was able to justify it. And then when people were questioning me, listening to them because they had real questions and opinions, but also like knowing when to stick with what I believed and like back that up. And like, it really is like a practice. And, and like, I don't know, standing up, not standing up for yourself, but like, believing in your own choices or something. And I want to ask about the boat also. You can, what was your thought?
No, I was just saying that mostly I think me and my first mate sailed mostly by our gut, like what our gut was telling us. If our gut was telling us, okay, we need to take the sail down, or like a lot of it, it seems really weird, but we made a lot of choices by our gut, which is so sometimes there isn't a reason why. You're just like, the two options look very similar, but my gut's telling me to do this one.
Yeah, totally. And often that gut feeling, like, it is based on knowledge. It's just this knowledge that isn't as like, maybe you can't like form a perfect sentence with lots of data involved to like explain it, but there is knowledge that you've gained over the years with your experience that is giving you that gut feeling, like it's not based on like woo woo nothingness. It's like a real, it's like
unicorns
real
and fairies.
Totally. Yeah. It's like real information that's giving you that. I like that. I wanted to ask about the boat. So, you mentioned the water maker breaking, and I was going to ask about sort of breakages, but yeah, first of all, like, can you, what exactly is Maiden? She's aluminum, 58 feet. Yeah, can you give like
She's 58, so Maiden is aluminium. She's 58 foot, designed by Bruce Farr. She was built in 1979 in Switzerland, originally named Disc d'Or for the 1980 Whitbread. And she did that with an all-male crew, and then she did a solo around the world race, as I believe she was called Stabilo Boss. And then Tracy found her. She was leaning against a harbour wall in Cape Town, and in a really, really bad state. But at that time, that was all that Tracy could afford. So she brought her back to the UK, and then named her Maiden. And she was Maiden for the 1989 Whitbread race with the first all-female crew. And then she was sold after the race because they didn't have enough money to keep her. And eventually Tracy found her again in 2016.
Sorry, you froze, but now you're back. So Tracy got the boat back in 2016.
In 2016, again in a really, really bad state, crowdfunded, and Princess Haya, who's the daughter of the original sponsor of the 89 race, put in a lot of money to help refit the boat, to get it back to the original state, which is, and then, there she is. That's Maiden.
Cool. So, and what were, like, within the race, what were Maiden's advantages? Like, what do you think gave you guys an edge with having that boat?
She's pretty light, I think, considering some of the boats we were up against. A lot of them were kind of Swans or Baltics, and they were quite heavy. She has a very distinctive stern shape, and that gives us an advantage downwind, especially in pretty big weather. We're able to carry a lot more sail than a lot of the other boats would, and definitely surf the waves a lot better than most of the boats. So we really, as soon as we got those conditions, we flew and made really good progress. But upwind, she does point higher than some of the boats, but not all of them.
Yeah, cool.
She's also a bit shorter than, well, she was kind of mid-size in the fleet, I guess.
Yeah.
A lot of the other boats we were against were a lot bigger, so Penduic obviously is a lot bigger, and so is Spirit of Helsinki and Translated 9, which were we were the 4 that were always leading.
Yeah.
And they're all quite a bit bigger. Yeah.
Yeah, totally. She does sort of stand out in the fleet. Yeah, and like you said, there were a lot of Swans and a lot of that style of boat, and she's definitely different. And yeah, what were sort of like her disadvantages, or also just like what were the things that broke and went wrong with her?
Yeah, so I think the one big disadvantage of Maiden is the level of comfort on board is a lot worse than most of the boats. So we didn't have a spray hood or anything like that, or a coach roof. So we're a pretty flat deck. And as you know, you've sailed the boat. She gets very, very wet. And, it's very hard work sailing that boat. A lot of the other boats were a lot more comfortable than us. So from a crewing point of view, it was more hard work to sail the boat, I think, than the other boats. Mm-hmm. Yeah, we had some issues. So our water maker broke on the last leg. We eventually managed to fix it, but because you're slowing down to try and catch rain with the squalls and things like that, it did put a bit of a dampener on our last leg. And it was just very frustrating not being able to fix an issue. Well, eventually we did, but it took us quite a while. What else? Obviously upwind she's not great, but
yeah,
I don't know many boats that are.
I think we were quite unlucky with
yeah, we were quite unlucky with the amount of light wind we got this race. All of us were joking that it's kind of a tour of the high pressures around the world, because we seem to get high pressures on every single leg, even in the Southern Ocean. Mm-hmm. So that's a joke between all of the OGR fleet. It was another high pressure.
Yeah, no matter where you go. Yeah, I noticed that. Yeah, and like sort of with, I guess, the water maker breaking, or with any other situations, did you have any moments where you thought you might have to stop racing? Was there any sort of go, no go moments there?
Yeah, so obviously when something as critical as the water maker does break, me and my first mate were thinking about contingency plans, and if we had to stop, where would we stop? And if we needed to get there, how much water per day are the crew going to be so we did start rationing water. We were thinking, okay, potentially we might have to either break a seal on one of our safety packs. So we have safety packs, and every seal you break is a 48-hour penalty, or it depends on what it is. So we were thinking, okay, potentially we might have to open this. And if that the emergency water maker doesn't work, we would then have to go into we were thinking the Azores or Madeira, depending on the wind direction. So it was one of those, that would obviously put us out of the race entirely. And even if we'd just taken the penalty, we wouldn't have won overall. So
yeah. Do you have any other moments like that where something broke or something happened where you thought maybe we need to think about a contingency plan to pull over?
On the first leg, we had a very near medevac situation. Molly had an issue with her back, and the doctors were potentially concerned about it to the point where we might have to medevac her, but I think eventually they okayed for her to carry on.
And those were those doctors that were with the race committee, or?
Yeah, so we have a MSOS who are our medical team that work with the race. So
Right.
everyone, we kind of ring them.
We use them too. It's like
every
medical services offshore or something like that.
telemed, yeah.
Yeah, and so you can call their doctors, and we like carry their med kit so they know what we have, and totally.
Yeah, same thing.
Yeah, that must have been sort of scary. Was she like, I want to carry on, and the doctors were?
She was absolutely adamant that she's going to carry on. So it's a difficult situation, really, because you're thinking, okay, what do we need to do to convince the doctors that she is okay, or is this an actual potential situation where we are going to have to medevac her?
Right, and better to do it, when you're.
But better to do it
early
while you're close to land. We were
exactly.
kind of going through the Canaries at the time.
Yeah.
It was a really tough situation, but she did eventually end up not doing the second and the third leg because of her back. She went and had surgery on it. But,
right. I remember hearing about that. Yeah. Oh,
yeah.
That's so tough.
That was a tough situation.
Yeah. And how much
especially for her.
Yeah, exactly. She was the one who had to have surgery and miss out. And how sort of like, I'm curious too about how the team evolved, because you had you had some around the world crew, you had some crew changes in every port, it seemed like, and how much change was there, and how was that with sort of building the team and
so after the first leg we had a lot of injury, and then my first mate had to come off for personal reasons, so we were down quite a few team members actually going into the second leg. We ended up taking 2 girls from other boats, one of which was the cook on Penjuk, who was only contracted to do legs 1 and 3. So she asked would she be able to come on for leg 2. And obviously I talked to Marie, and Marie wasn't too happy about it to start with. We managed to convince her. So we got Estelle. Obviously she wasn't a cook on Maiden, she was crew. So she was very happy about that. And then we got Mariama from Neptune, who was on, I think, mostly male team, and just liked the look of all-female team. And again, I okayed that with the skipper, and we got her. And then we got Erica Lush back, who had been in the rigger on the boat for a very long time when I was working on it before, which was awesome. So she stepped in for Rachel. So we did, I think we were down to 10 or 11 for that second leg. So it kind of evolved over time. And then when we got to Auckland, we didn't have an injury, but we got Molly back and we got Rachel back. So it's kind of, we had some getting off for injury, and then people coming back from injuries, and we had a lot of crews on other boats asking us, hey, do you have any spots on Maiden for the next leg?
Yeah, there was a moment. I saw this this article, I think when the second leg was starting, about, I think 2 boats went into that leg with no women on board because
it was going into the third leg.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And it was a little like, it was this little like scuttlebutt article, or some like little article on some sailing website. And then we didn't hear much else about it, and we didn't hear much about it from OGR, but like there was chat on Facebook and like sort of within groups of sailors I know that were like, just sort of watching and wondering, like, obviously you all were sort of in the, in my opinion, luxury position of having an all-female crew. And then some of the other boats, were sort of carrying one woman on board to meet the requirement of having a mixed gender crew. And then that was, not fun for some of those women who were on board, it seemed.
No, definitely not. And that's why we ended up getting, Mariama and Capucine as well from another boat, who just wasn't enjoying being the only female on board. So there was, it's not a fun place to be. We've all been in that situation. Most women I know in the industry have all been in that situation where you're on an all-male crew and you're kind of the only woman there.
Yeah. And it's too bad that the requirement wasn't like have the requirement being like that having one woman on board is enough to fill the requirement, that I have always found to sort of be confusing, because that doesn't really make a mixed gender boat. Like it's being the only one in any scenario is not always fun.
I think it was, so the exact wording was a mixed gender crew, which obviously we got dispensation for because of the legacy of the boat. The 2 boats that ended up going without women also got dispensation for those legs because they, quote, couldn't find any women.
Excuse me. Oh my gosh. Yeah, that's what was crazy, is like people were getting penalties for all sorts of stuff. You're talking about safety stuff, like breaking the seal on your safety pack, like that will get you a pretty big penalty. And there was no penalty for not
having women.
Yeah, and I know tons of women, myself included, who like love. Yeah, I don't know. Like, there are lots of sailors who would happily race around the world in the right, if they were asked.
But then it is if they're struggling to get women. I don't know how many women would want to be on a boat that's struggling to get women.
Of course. Yeah. We're the other woman at jump ship. Yeah.
You really want to be on the boat, but do you want to be on that boat?
Yeah.
And I know both boats well, and I don't think it's necessarily everyone on board. I think sometimes there's like 1 or 2 people that are quite difficult, make their life difficult on board, and that's a real shame. But then there's also some amazing crew members on board those 2 boats as well, who are wonderful and will empower and support and encourage women. But it only takes one person to make you feel very uncomfortable, and it's true. 40 days at sea it's not always a nice place to be.
Yeah definitely. I was wondering about that. Yeah, I wanted to also ask you, gosh, there's so many things, but sort of about the the media aspect of your race experience, and now getting back and having sort of, I'm sure lots of media attention from coming back and winning the race, and you've got the youngest female skipper, she's only 27 thing, which I'm also 27, and I all the time sort of experience what is often people's genuine excitement, but there's sort of an extra angle of attention there. And I recently rewatched the original Maiden documentary, or the film that they made, and was reminded of just the questions that crew got as they were sailing around the world. And the questions were mostly sort of who's fighting? What's it like being on a boat with all women? What's the drama? And then this morning I watched an interview that you had with BBC Breakfast morning show. Yeah. And it was the same questions. About. It was I was just surprised, because it was it was a short little interview, and you and your crew who were in the interview did great with the questions, but it was a similar what's the drama kind of experience. Yeah. And I wondered how much you had that throughout the experience. Yeah.
I mean, there's a couple of questions that we always get asked, which is, did everyone get on? That is the main one that people ask. Did you all get on? And I don't know any sailing team in the world that didn't have a little bit of tension at one point, or a little bit of this at that one point. But we honestly had minimal arguments. Nobody ever shouted at each other. We were all very kind of chilled out, and it's just not called for. And that was frustrating, getting asked that again and again. And especially, that particular interview, they were kind of quite pushing on that. Was there any big dramas, anything that you're not allowed to talk about off the boat? And it's kind of well, we wouldn't say it on live TV. Yeah, exactly. There was. And then
that's sort of the only thing they asked.
Yeah, pretty much. And then Amy, poor engineer, stood next to me, who said, they asked her, "Oh, what's your skipper like? Just pretend she's not there." What? Yeah. So that was very disappointing.
Yeah, it felt like sort of digging for drama in this way. That was, I was bummed by too. Sort of, 35 years after the original Maiden. Or however many years it's been, something like that.
And I think it's 35, yeah.
Yeah, and sort of similar. Yeah, and then your Najiba, the the photographer got asked, like, was there any footage you're not allowed to show? And she had this lovely answer just about how wonderful her experience was on board, and sort of, dodged it very gracefully. And you all came across beautifully, but like, my God, I was like, really?
Yeah.
Did you experience
trying not to roll your eyes whilst on camera?
Totally. Yeah. And did you have other than that, how have your media experiences been, like during the race and now after?
I think we still lack the kind of technical questions and the tactical questions that a lot of the other boats get, which is disappointing. We still do get a lot of the, how did you get on questions and that kind of thing, and some of the questions we get asked are pretty inappropriate, not on media, but just on a one-to-one level from some people. I mean, mostly it's been great, and there's been some amazing journalists that have really connected with the story and really asked you some interesting questions that made you think a bit about things. But I mean, on the whole, I'm not used to like the media stuff. It's really out of my comfort zone. So you just kind of have to work out what to say and how to best come across. But
that's tough. Yeah, and you're
I'm
also
I'm not trained to do this stuff. So.
Well, and you're also the Maiden and the crew is in this unique position of also representing an organization and a nonprofit and like a long storyline, and so it's not just Heather Thomas skippering Maiden. It's like you are that, and then you are also an ambassador for this program that, which is a whole other layer. Is there something you sort of like? Is there a question that you wish you'd gotten asked, or a question you wish that people were asking?
Nothing like in particular. I think whenever we came into port, we just never really were asked, why did you make this decision and why did you make that? They never really wanted to know about that sort of stuff, which I guess is a long race. Maybe they've forgotten, but I did see some other interviews with other skippers where they were asked about that in depth, and it's still one of those, they never got asked it back in '89, and now we're still not getting asked those questions. And me and Tracy actually did do a little interview where she did ask me about the tactical things and some technical questions, and
you guys like had to do it yourself, but you did it.
Yeah, we did it ourselves. So we finally did it ourselves.
This is like the theme of Maiden, where it's like, if no one's going to ask you to do it, you do it yourself.
Just do it yourself. And a lot of the time we also, as you said, we're ambassadors for the charity. So I do try and like, whatever question they're asking me, bring it back to the charity and what we're trying to do and what we were trying to do during the race, and kind of highlight that we're not, as you say, we're not only racing around the world, we're also raising money for a charity. We're being ambassadors for girls' education and really kind of representing women sailing in general, because I mean there's only one female team on this race. There were not many women on the other teams really. There was actually more French people than women.
It's a crazy statistic.
It's one of these statistics that they put up at some presentation at an event, and I just went, so there's more French than women? Is that something that we should be shouting about?
I know.
I'm not sure that's something we should be shouting about. I mean,
oh my God.
I love French people, don't get me wrong, but if there's an entire nation that is more well represented than half the population of the world, I think there's some issue there, isn't there?
Definitely. Yeah, that is wild. Yeah, and wild to like put it up on a banner at an event or whatever. Oh my gosh. Well, something I want to circle back to that kind of relates to the questions you do and don't get asked was about the retro part of the race and what that was like. And I know when we met, you were practicing Celestial a lot. You'd already done quite a bit of it and were teaching it to some of the crew, I think. Like you clearly already had that under your belt. But then doing a whole round the world race on it is like a different animal, and the weather aspect. And like, can you sort of describe what your navigation and weather looked like when you got up in the morning? Like what were you doing to figure out where you were and what you were going to do next.
Yeah, so the Ocean Go races is such a unique race because of this aspect of it being retro and not having satellite comm. Well, we have satellite comms, but not allowed to use it for weather, and not having GPS. So it did take us a while to adjust, I think. But yeah, so we were doing sites. Me and my first mate did the navigation. So we were on a 6 hours on, 6 hours off rotation, which allowed us enough time to get a good fix if it wasn't cloudy. And then also tune into the HF broadcast. So there's kind of two components to the navigation. There's the kind of finding out where you are, and then finding out where you want to be. So the finding out where you are, so we, depending on the time of day, I usually woke up and did a site straight away so that I've got one, because you've got to wait 2 hours really before each site, depending on what it is.
Can you describe why that is? Like, why do you have to wait 2 hours?
You've got to wait 2 hours because the angle that the sun is has to change by a significant amount to be able to get a good cross on your fix, because when you take a sight of the sun, you get a position line like you would if you were doing like a three-point fix of a buoy or something like that. You only get that line, so you could be anywhere on that line. So in 2 hours' time, you then get a slightly different line because of the sun's changed in the sky, and then you get a cross, or you hope you get a cross. I mean, depending on how close you are to the equator or where the sun's declination is, sometimes you don't get a very good cross, but it gets you something at least. Cool. I was very lucky because my first mate is an absolute whiz at star sites, so she would quite often be able to get a absolute perfect star site. So one at twilight and one at kind of when the sun down, one when the sun came up. So I always put her on those watches because I'm not as good at stars as she is. So cool. I just can't find them in the sky. I'm terrible. So that was kind of one component, and then obviously doing the DRs. So when it wasn't, we had no sun or moon or stars or planets, we would do a dead reckoning position, and that would happen probably at least once every 3 hours, if not once every 2 hours. And certainly every time we tacked or jibed, so our logbook looks quite different. I know a lot of people would do the log on the hour every hour and be really strict about it, but we kind of just did it, if we jibed, we'd do a log entry so that we'd have that position, and if we did a site, we'd do a log entry at that time. So that's slightly different. And then where you want to be is kind of more tricky. Most of it comes into the weather. So the weather, we had various different ways of getting it. We had high seas forecasts, which you can get over high frequency radios. So that's tuning in at a certain time on a certain frequency, and you usually have to switch between a couple of frequencies to find the best signal. It's usually not very clear to start with. It's usually in a bit of a weird accent, so the Australian ones were quite difficult to understand. And they're usually very long-winded with a lot of coordinates of like between this coordinate, like a long line of coordinates, and then it tells you something about that area. So you had to write all of this stuff down, and you had to get pretty good at remembering or just being able to do it in shorthand very quickly. And then you had to kind of plot that on your chart, or we had pilot charts, and we ended up having like tracing paper we'd stick over the top of the pilot charts to draw out all the weather for that day or for the next couple of days. We also, on top of the high frequencies forecast, had a very lovely gentleman called Peter who... sorry, they're just washing the windows. Scared the hell out of me. We had a lovely guy called Peter Mott, who runs a program called Passage Guardian Radio, and he would organise time every day, and he would speak to us every day and give us weather forecasts. And we were also able to use him to send messages home, which was really, really valuable for us to be able to talk to our families a little. I mean, not much, but have birthday sister or that kind of thing, or we've broken this part, can you please get it ready for us in the next port.
And you do that over the radio. Like he had a would it be sort of a ham
frequency
radio set up at home that, or
it
is
wasn't
it
a ham radio. he actually had something similar to a ham radio, but yeah, he had a proper high frequency radio setup that I haven't seen it, but I've heard it's quite expansive, and he can direct his radio towards us as well, which helps us to be able to hear him from quite a way away. Like, we were speaking to him quite far. We had the advantage of being an aluminium boat, which meant that we grounded our radio into the boat, which meant that we could hear a lot more than a lot of the boats. So most of the boats couldn't hear Peter for a long time, so we were relaying everything from Peter to the other boats. Wow. So it's kind of like this chain of, be like an hour long call of, you'd get the information from Peter and then be like trying to transcribe it and say, okay, does anyone need me to repeat this or this or this or this?
Yeah.
So that was another way of getting the weather. We then had Weather Fax, which is a fax machine that prints out weather charts, which is amazing. But most of the stations are closed down. So we only really were successful getting that from Australia, which was really helpful in the Southern Ocean and in the Tasman Sea, but not so helpful most everywhere else. Wow. Some boats were managing to get it from Germany and Boston, but we were not successful. I think by that time our coax cables weren't in the best condition, so that was unfortunate. The other way of getting information was any cargo vessel in the area. You can radio them and ask them for weather information. Unfortunately, most cargo ships, they're not sailors on board, really. So you say, okay, what's the weather going to be like in Madeira? They'd be like, oh, it's nice and sunny in Madeira. And you're like,
I need different information.
So I'd be like, okay, cool. What's the wind doing? I'm like, oh, it's really good. The wind's going to die right off. And you're like, no.
Yeah, exactly. That's not what I want. You're like, I'm not interested in like going to the beach weather. I want sailing weather.
So you had to be very specific about what you wanted from them. So you'd have to be like, okay, we're going at this many knots. We're going to be in this kind of area tomorrow. What's the weather looking like there? And is there anywhere around there that has more wind or less wind or different angle? So, and you'd get some people that were really interested and really would talk to you for a long time about different weather, and especially like the sailing boats you came across were fantastic because
I'm sure
they would be able to give you super good weather. And then the last kind of way of finding the weather was every day we had a fleet call on the high frequency radio. So we would talk to as many of the boats as it was possible. Not everyone actually wanted to do this. Like, some of the boats just didn't do it the entire time, and some boats were there every single time on the dot. And we would share our position, and we'd share our wind strength, wind direction, and our barometer. And that gives you a pretty good indication of what's happening around you, especially because we weren't leading the fleet most of the time, so you could see what was happening ahead.
That's cool.
But then also in the Southern Ocean, you can see what's happening behind you as well, which is because the systems are moving that way.
Right.
It was really helpful.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, you kind of put all of these jigsaw pieces together to create a picture, and yeah, see what you could do from that.
And how did that like compare to you from the way you've navigated and done weather routing before? Like, beforehand, you're getting, grip files, and you're getting maybe an email from a weather router giving you advice, and constant, GPS position. Like, did it slow you down in a way that was interesting, or was it frustrating? Like,
I think there were times when it was really frustrating when you had very little information. There was about, I think, a week just after we came past the Cape Verdes on leg one where we didn't have any weather information at all. We didn't see any cargo boats. We didn't see anything. And then one of the Clipper fleet came up behind us and recognized the boat name and radioed us. And it was, I think, Nano, who was on the Punta del Este yacht. And he gave us some incredible information and even like current information. But it is frustrating when you've got nothing to go on, and especially when you've got no wind. You don't know where the wind is. And when you're coming up to the doldrums and you had no information, it's kind of a bit disconcerting of, all right, well, there could be a really good patch where we could get through this really quickly, but we don't have that information. So it's kind of the unknown.
Yeah. Did it make you rely more on like observations, like just going on deck and looking around than usual, or like did that change for you from this?
I think for me, I really liked the way that we had our weather. I mean, I know it was tricky at times, but I think, especially for me and my first mate, we had such an appreciation for knowing where the low pressures are, where the high pressures are, knowing about where they're likely to move, looking at the clouds, what's that going to mean? The barometer, okay, we've had a big drop, what does that mean? You knew intensely where every front was, every warm front, everything. You had such an appreciation for everything that was going on around you. And I don't think I've ever really had such a keen feeling about that before. Because you just rely on the grip files and your router tells you where to go. So you kind of just go, well, okay, I'll do that. And you don't think, why are they telling us that? Because when you have to do it yourself, you're literally going, okay, well, I think we need to do this or this or this, or what happens if this high pressure moves more quickly, or if it stalls, what am I going to... So you have to think about it in such a deep way. Whereas if you're being told where to go, or if you're getting either predict wind routing in, you just follow it and don't think about it.
That's such a good point. I think, I think people have gotten, it's easy to get comfortable with routing being done for you, or I think people like find that and that feels nice, and it feels nice to be like, oh, great, they're telling me where to go. I don't have to, like all these decisions that you've been talking about this whole interview where you're like, like as the skipper faced with okay, I have to pick which way we're going, and I have to, decide and stand behind that. And even if it doesn't go well, like that's my decision. And, and I think, I don't know, it's so powerful to like get deeper on that weather routing information. And it's an exercise that we always try to do at 59 North, or I always try to do myself, is like question the router, question what predict winds routing is telling me, question, what the weather router's recommendations are, sometimes disagree with the weather router, like often disagree with the weather router. But it's hard to do when you have all the information, and it is easy to get complacent. So that's a cool feature that I wouldn't have thought of from this race.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I didn't think of that to start with. I didn't think that I would learn as much about weather. I mean, I think going in, I didn't have as much knowledge as I probably should have done. We did have a really good session with Christian Demard, who's a very famous sailing race weather router, which really helped me understand things in a lot more depth. But actually being out there and doing it yourself and having to back those decisions, they didn't always come off. Specifically one time, I think when we were coming through the Canaries, I decided to come through the Canaries rather than go around it, and really I should have been further west, and I should have been trying to get further west for a long time before that. But
because of where the high pressure was, or what was, why was that the wrong call?
Yeah, it was, I think we just needed to be a little bit further west to get more clear air going through the Canaries. And it's those things that you learn from, and you learn why next time you'll do it that way instead. Or
I was going to end by asking what's next for Maiden and what's next for you.
So Maiden is being winterized right now at the start of summer. She's got some work that needs doing, and then we're not really sure. We don't have any funding at the moment to do anything else. So watch this space. I'm sure it'll be not long until we work out what we're going to do with her. For me personally, I'm doing some freelance stuff at the moment. I'm looking actually at working for 59 and for Clipper as well, and doing some instructing, and just trying to keep myself in big boats and keep racing. And
cool. So this experience has made you want more things like the OGR. Yeah, I saw a quote somewhere where you said like won't be your last OGR or something like that, which is exciting to hear.
No, I really like the concept of the race, and as I was saying before about like the no GPS and the no weather information, I think it's such a really unique thing to be able to experience. And I'd love to do it again.
Yeah. Oh, well, take me with you next time. I saw they saw they just announced 2027, and honestly, watching you all go around I was like, there were moments where I was like, oh, what am I doing sitting at home? Yeah, it looked fantastic.
I just need a boat. I need a boat and a crew, and then we'll be ready.
Yeah, let me know. I'm so into it. Yeah, cool. Is there anything I didn't ask you want to mention or shout out? Or I wanted to ask you like stuff about the team and stuff about like I wanted to ask about some specific moments of the race, but there's just not enough time.
We'll have to just do another podcast then, won't
we? Yeah, we should.
I think just kind of lastly, a big kind of thank you to all the supporters, because we wouldn't have been able to really do it without the support of all of our friends and family, and even people we don't even know. There's been so many people that have congratulated us and been a part of this journey, even if, we haven't spoken to them or been there. So a big thank you to everyone who's been out there that's been watching our journey, because it means a lot. We can't do it unless someone's watching us doing it. So
yeah,
if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, it has made, as you can probably see from all the reactions you're getting, like it has made such an impact. And I was just saying, I rewatched Maiden recently, the film, and it was with a bunch of people here in Portland, Maine. This nonprofit here called Sail Maine put it together, and like 100 people showed up, and it was, and most of them had never seen the film and had sort of gotten tipped off to it because of you all winning the race, and it was so special. And there's some like 7-year-old girls there seeing it for the first time, and it was really special. So. Yeah, it's
it is. I cry every time I watch the movie, and I've watched it many times with work because we did screenings as well. I cry every time. Yeah, no, totally. I mean, and I was in tears when you guys won, and also when you were coming into I just like, it's really it's really special. So congratulations. This is all very well deserved for you and for the team, and thanks for chatting with me. This has been really fun. Yeah, it has. Thank you very much for having me.
Thanks to Harborburn Cannon Company for presenting this season of On the Wind. If you own a boat, you need a cannon. Harborburn.com. That's harborburn.com. Thanks again to Forbes Horton Yachts for presenting this season of On the Wind. Go to ForbesYachts.com to sell your boat or buy your dream boat today. That's ForbesYachts.com. On the Wind is the podcast about sailing, created by 59 Degrees North and hosted by me, Emma Garshagen, August Sandberg, and Andy Schell. The show is mixed and produced in Maryland by Lee Cumberland. Episode artwork and website show notes are done by Laura Parent in San Francisco. The intro theme music was written and performed by former podcast guest Cameron Dale. And the outro music that you're hearing now is by our friends at Stormweather Shanty Choir, who have also been on the show. We love hearing from you, so please send us a note at holdfast@59-north.com. And you can also help us out a lot by reviewing the show on iTunes. It really does help. Thank you so much for listening, and as always, hold fast.
And when me money was all gone on liquor and the horse, I made up me mind that I was inclined to go to sea no more. No more, no more, to go to sea no more. I made up me mind that I was inclined to go to sea no more. As I was walking down the street, I met sweet Angeline. She said, come home with me, me lad, and we'll have a cracking time. But when I awoke, it was no joke. I found I was all alone. My silver watch and my money too, and my whole bloody gear was gone.
Was gone, was gone. My whole bloody gear was gone. It was when I awoke, it was no joke, for my whole bloody gear was gone.
As I was walking down the street, I met Big Rapper Brown. I asked him if he would take me in, and he looked at me with a frown. He said,
last time you was paid up with me, you took up no score. But I'll take your advance and I'll give you a chance to go to sea once more.
Once more, once more, to go to sea once more. I'll take your advance and I'll give you a chance to go to sea once more.
sometimes we're catching whales, me lads, but mostly we get none. With a 20-foot oar in every paw from 5 o'clock in the morn. And when daylight's gone and the night's coming on, we rest upon our oars. And oh boys, you wish that you was dead or snug with the girls ashore.
Ashore, ashore, or snug with the girls ashore. Oh boys, you wish that you was dead or snug with the girls ashore.
Come all you seafaring lads that listen to me song. When you go a big boating, boys, make sure you do not go wrong. You take my tip when you come off a trip, don't go with any whores. But get married instead and have all night in bed and go to sea no more.
No more, no more, to go to sea no more. Get married instead and have all night in bed and go to sea no more. No more, no more, to go to sea no more. Get married instead and have all night in bed and go to sea no more.